AMCON has given the banks fully tradable, fully registered, government-guaranteed bonds. Those bonds can be discounted at the CBN window. They can be repoed at the CBN window for cash, and they can be sold in the secondary market through the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So any bank that wants to make a loan, that wants to get liquidity out of those bonds, can do so in one of these three ways. They don't have to wait for the maturity date.
There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding with regards to what AMCON is doing with the Nigerian banks, especially talking about the three nationalized banks. Do you want to give a clarity on this?
I don't like to use the expression nationalized banks because what we look at it as, it was a regulatory intervention in these banks, and the other option was to liquidate them. So it's not, in our point of view, in nationalized banks. Having said that, we have a lot of shares in probably all the banks in Nigeria, except maybe two. For the three banks that are owned 100% by AMCON today, we have a process of getting them sold to new investors. The process is complicated. We have to get many approvals from the Central Bank of Nigeria, for example. You have to make sure where the sources of funds are coming from. You have to make sure these are fit and proper persons to run the bank. And so the process, and then we have to be very transparent, because the last thing AMCON needs is the accusations from the public that the banks were handed over to special interests. So all of this will probably take 2 to 3 years to complete. I anticipate that the banks will be sold sometime in the next 18 months to 3 years.
Now, recently the House of Reps faulted the CBN over its handling of some of the banks, and has also suggested that due process have been compromised with the composition of, the hierarchy of AMCON. What's your take on this?
I don't know what the House will be referring to. The AMCON board was nominated by some by Ministry of Finance, some by CBN, but they were appointed by the President of Nigeria and subjected to the confirmation of the Senate. That was what the law called for. So I happen to think it's a very good law. The President was not bound to accept any nominations. So I think that in these matters, you look at the results, and I'm very proud to say that the AMCON board is very independent and very professional and very efficient.
No. Okay, the banking sector was second worst performing index on the local exchange in 2011, falling about 32%. What is the expectation when results come in for the first quarter of 2012?
I think, and I've said this both to local and international investors, that Nigerian banks are grossly undervalued. We, as an institution, are the largest holder of banking stocks. We like them, we're going to hold on to them, and I think that in the next year or two, you will see people realize the value in Nigerian banks. So markets operate on many things. They operate on emotion, they operate on fear, they operate on greed, and people who were burnt the last time with these banks may be reluctant to come back in. But I think that they're making a mistake, and that Nigerian banking stocks are grossly undervalued. And that's why we're happy to hold on to what we have.
Now, there seems to be relative improvement, in the banking sector as a whole, with most banks hosting stable earnings. What measures, are needed to prevent the sector from a similar collapse that occurred about 3 years ago, and how prepared is AMCON towards, guarding against the incidents?
Well, let me give general investment advice to the Nigerian public, which is that banks should be valued somewhere between 1 times book value and 3 times book value. That's where banks should be. Banks were trading in the crazy days at sometimes 10 times book value, which is unsustainable. Nigerian banks on average today are trading below book value, which again that's why I say they're undervalued. Now, banks in Nigeria should be trading at 1.5 to 2 times book, is what all the analysis will tell you. So my advice is this: when banks are trading below 1 times book, buy them. When you're trading above 3 times book, be careful how you buy them. So in that case, you will not get the bubble we experienced in the past. And once you don't get the bubble, you will not get the kind of collapse we had in the past. They were clearly overvalued in the past. And talking about earnings, the earnings that I've seen are not stable. The earnings that I've seen are tremendous. GT, Zenith, and First Bank have published earnings that are in the range of 100 billion of profit a year at the rate they published in the first quarter. Those are unprecedented numbers, and I think that those earnings tell you that the banks are healthy again.